When you start working extensively with paragraph text here in CorelDRAW, one scenario that might pop up is the text has already been typed somewhere else. Maybe it's in another application like Microsoft Word or Corel Word Perfect. Maybe it's just plain text in a Notepad file. So long as you've already got the text, you don't want to have to retype it. So in those scenarios, you might want to bring it into your project in CorelDRAW by creating some paragraph frames for that text and then flow that text from one frame to the next. That flow can happen on the same page or even across multiple pages. So that's what we're going to look at in this lesson using this file that I've opened up. It's called newmenu1.cdr. If you've got the exercise files, you'll find it in the Lesson 5 folder. Go ahead and open up that. You'll see it's a two-pager. On the first page here, we've got lots of images. It makes our file size a little bit big, but we've also got some empty space here for putting that text in that I was talking about. Same thing on page 2. If we click the page 2 tab, some images, but some room for some additional text. We'll go back to our first page. This is where we're going to start by creating our first paragraph frame. So I'm going to go over here to my text tool, give it a click, and I'm going to use the guidelines here. If you're not snapping to guidelines, go up to the View menu and make sure Snap to Guidelines is checked off. Mine is, so I'm going to click out here in my document, and I'm ready to use those guidelines to create my frame. So I'm going to go up here close to this top left corner here, click and drag across. You can see how it snaps to that guideline. Down, I don't want to go too far that I overlap that image down below. I want to go just above the image and let go. So there's my first frame. Something's not right though. You may have noticed right away that I've got this huge cursor flashing right in the center. Well, we're going to be creating menu items with prices on the right hand side. So we need things to be lined up on the left and maybe use a right align tab to get the prices on the right. So we can do all of that formatting ahead of time. So when we bring in our text, things look right. So I'm going to do that right now. First thing that I don't like that I see is that I'm centered. So I can go up to my property bar, change it from center alignment to left. Step 1 complete. The size is bothering me. That's because it's close to 58 points. Way too big for this menu. We'll click the size drop down. And let's go to, well, I'd like 20 points. So I'm just going to click up here and type over what's selected, 20, and hit enter. So now I've got a 20-point font in here. It wasn't on the list, so you can just type in your own values. 20 points is perfect. The other thing I'm seeing that I don't like is on the ruler, where I've got all these tab stops every half an inch, the default. Like I said, I'm going to have a menu item on the left, a price on the right. I know for a fact that the person who entered the menu text in Notepad used a tab to separate the menu item from the menu price. So we need to fix our tabs. Now what I like to do in these cases is just click on my pick tool and make sure the entire frame is selected. That way I'm not just getting a portion of the contents. So with it entirely selected, let's go up to text and down to tabs. We've done this before. We're going to remove all these defaults by clicking the Remove All button and just add one right about the 3.75 inch mark up here on the ruler. So I'm going to click and drag over that, type 3.75. And when I add it, I need to change the alignment from left. So I'll click on left, click the drop down and choose right. And let's use those little dot leaders. I'm going to click on where it says off, click again to see the drop down and choose on. I also have leader options if I want to change the options. See how we've got these little dots? That's the character being used. I could choose other characters if I wanted to. None of those really make sense. I kind of like the dot. So I'm going to leave it as our dot. The spacing is single spacing. You can see one character. If I want to spread it out a little more, I could bump it up to 2, or I could bump it down to 0 and look how many dots I get. I'm going to leave it at 0 and click OK. There we go. When I click OK, the formatting of that frame is done. So when I click on my text tool, watch what happens. I'm inside my paragraph frame, look at my ruler, no tabs until I get to about the 3.75 inch mark. I'm thinking maybe that could go over a little bit further. So right here from my ruler, I'm going to click and drag it over just a little bit closer to the 4. There we go. That's perfect. So all I have to do is bring in my text, but before I do that, I should add the other frames. I want you to see something that happens here. With my text tool still selected, I'm going to add another frame here on the right hand side. And I'm going to do it right about here, across and down. So I'm below that image, all the way down to the guidelines. That looks good right there. Look what happened. I'm back to the defaults, but I don't have to worry about that. When I flow text from one frame to another, the formatting comes along by default. I'll show you where that's set up. Let's go to page 2 first. and add those additional frames. I'm going to put another one in here close to the edge and across to that guideline and down to that guideline, release. Got another guideline here I'm going to use. I want to be just below that image, cross and down. That's good right there. And another one for what looks like my desserts according to the photos. They look good. Cross and down. And now I've got all of my frames. So back I go to page 1, my menu page. I'm going to click inside. Now I'm ready to start typing or borrowing text that's already been typed. That's what we're going to do. Just before we do though, let's check out the tools and then options. We'll come up to workspace, click that plus sign because we want to go down to text. Click that plus sign and we'll see paragraph. Clicking on paragraph shows you what's going to happen with linked frames. First of all, we're going to show the linking of the text frames by default. You're going to know exactly what frame is linked to what frame. Also, the frames themselves show up. And down below, apply paragraph frame formatting. So all that formatting we just did in the first frame is automatically going to be applied to selected and subsequent frames. To all linked frames or to selected frames only is another option, but I want it to any selected and subsequent frames from my first one on. So that's perfect. All I have to do is click OK here to accept those defaults. Now to get my text. Well, I've already got Notepad open down here. I'm going to click on it. You can see my text is selected. The quickest way to select it, Control A on your keyboard. Selects all your text. You could also do it from the Edit menu. And you'll see Select All is currently not available because I've already got it selected. So I click out here, Control A again to make sure it's selected. Now I'm going to copy it. Control C on the keyboard is a shortcut. Or Edit and Copy, your choice. That puts it on the Windows clipboard. We'll minimize this. Now if you've got the exercise files, by the way, menuitems.txt is in the Lesson 5 folder if you want to go grab this text from Notepad. I'm going to minimize this and I'm ready to start pasting now. All I have to do is make sure I'm in that first frame, which I am. Click my paste button and in it goes. Look at that. It's got the dots, it's got the right aligned dollar amounts, and my frame is red. Let's go to our pick tool. Frame is red because there's more down below than what meets the eye. If I come down here to that little arrow tab at the bottom and click and drag that down, you can see I get into lighter fair. And it's overlapping my images, and that's no good. That's why I created my frame up here. So I'm going to let go right up here. And to get the remaining text to flow into this frame, all I do is I click on that tab at the bottom, right on that flow tab, give it a click. Look what happens. I've got this huge arrow waiting for me to select the next frame. Well, it's this frame right here, so I click, and there's my lighter fair. Look at that. It fits nicely in there, doesn't it? And when I click on this paragraph frame, it's got its own arrow. If I drag that down, you can see Main Dishes is coming up next. So I want to scroll up above Main Dishes and click on the arrow tab down at the bottom. And now I'm going to flow on to the next page, page 2. It's going in here. Click. Notice that all of the formatting comes along with it. That's perfect. It tells me it's coming from page 1. That was part of our default setting to show the link coming from page 1. I'm seeing the beverages down here though, so I'm going to drag the bottom border up until beverages disappears. Now I'm going to click on the tab itself down below and flow the remaining text over here to my beverages section. Look at that. Are they all showing up? I click again on this frame, drag it down. There's wine down below, so I want to make sure that shows up as well. Now I'm going to click on the arrow. One more frame to go, and when I click here, there are my desserts. Click on this frame to select it. Look at that. The tab down below has no more arrow in it, meaning I'm seeing all of my text. Everything I copied from Notepad now shows up here in my draw file. And you can also see the linking from page 1. We go here. There's a thin blue line. It's very difficult to see. I'm going to zoom in to the middle area here. And I'm going to go back to my pick tool. See that thin line that's pointing up to this frame, and then there's a blue line pointing down to the next frame down below. If I go back to page 1 and Shift F4 to zoom back out, I'm going to click on the first paragraph frame, and you can see there's a link going down to this frame with a dotted link to page 2. Everything's linked up. I know exactly where it's going, and it's smart. So when I resize those frames that might not be visible become visible, or if there's too much, when I size it down, it flows on to the next frame thanks to these links that we've set up. So I'm going to click outside my document to see the end result. Looks like a pretty nice menu. You might have a little bit of formatting you might want to do at this point. Maybe you want to format the titles to be centered or stand out. That's up to you. You can use character and paragraph formatting at this point. But with paragraph linking, it's nice to know that if you've already got the text, you don't have to retype it. Just bring it in and flow from one frame to the next.